name is Birdbrain, and today we are talking about cleanup. This week I will borrow Lackadaisy's assets and characters again. Lackadaisy is an amazing comic created by Tracy G. Butler and currently being adapted as a 2D short film. We share lots of info about the development of the project on this website, so be sure to check it out. I'm gonna link it into the description below. So this week we're talking about how to clean up using the pencil tool, and we're gonna focus on closing the gaps, because this is usually what sets the brush and the pencil apart. It's closing the gaps when you draw. So cleaning up with the brush is pretty easy and straightforward. You just draw, and what you draw is what you get. On the other hand, with the pencil, what you draw is a lot more flexible because you'll be able to click on it, select it, and change the size of your line. And if you use a pencil textured line, you can also get a textured look that is a lot lighter than any bitmap or textured vector brushes. This is because the texture is procedural, so it's lighter than a brush. So like I said, today what we're going to be focusing on is closing the gaps. Because with the brush, if a line looks like it's closed, if I take my bucket and I try to fill it on the color art, it's closed. So it works because my lines were touching each other. However, with the pencil, if I draw something similar, and my lines look like it's touching, if I try to paint it using my bucket, it's not gonna work. And this is because my lines are actually not closed. Because with the pencil, what is important is the vector spine needs to touch. Because if the artwork touches like that, and you change the line weight to something smaller, then your lines are not actually touching. So that's why Harmony is not able to tell. Of course, you can still use the bucket tool to try and close the gap as you go, but this should be like emergency situation. You shouldn't rely on it. Alright, so today we're going to learn different tricks to close your gaps using the pencil lines. To help you close your shapes, there's many things you can do. First, snapping your lines. To snap your lines together, you can use the Alt shortcut, and this works both for the line tool and the pencil tool. So if I take my line tool, I draw a line, and I press on Alt, you'll see it's going to try to snap, and I can just keep going like that. Same thing with the pencil. I can do this, then press Alt, and keep pressing Alt. And if I press on K to see my vectors, you see, everything is closed. If I didn't press Alt, I would have had something like that. And the lines are not closed. But if you're using the line tool, you can also just go here and you can just activate the snap to contour, and this will basically allow you to use the line tool like this, and it will make your line snap almost automatically. However, if you activate it, be sure to click here and deactivate the allow snapping on all drawing layers, because it will make Harmony try to snap to like 36 different layers at the same time. It can crash when you try to do that. So always deactivate it and your life will be insanely easier. I typically keep it turned off just because sometimes it's annoying, but when I need it, I like to turn it back on. So let's try it on this shape here. To anchor my sideburns to my head, I'm going to use the Alt key. And you see, it creates your lines and links them together. Sometimes it creates some weird stuff like that, but for hand-drawn animation, it's okay. It's just a problem in rigging, but we're not talking about rigging today, so it's fine. To quickly create closed shapes, you can close your line using the Control key or Command key. So let's say that I was working on this eyebrow here. I could use my pencil, I could draw something like this, and then press on Command or Control and close my shape like that. I love to use that for different parts of my cleanup. That needs to be closed. Because if you don't use the key and you try to do this, it's not going to be closed. But if you use the key, then it makes your life that much easier. Be careful, however, because this will use the first level of pressure it has and merged it at the end. So if you had a very thin line here and a very thick one and you try to merge them, you might have something weird. So it gets some time to get used to, but it's a very powerful tool. And it's even more amazing with styles that don't have any pressure, like anime or rigging, because then you don't get the issue of losing weight when it connects. It works great for things that are kind of pointy and not exactly round. So it works great with this eyebrow, but it's not going to work as great for, let's say, a iris, because sometimes you're going to get a very sharp turn here. So to make shapes that are more round, I have another feature for you. So closing your shapes using the Trim Extra Line button. So this feature is perfect to close shapes that are smooth like irises or buttons. To activate it, you can go to your pencil properties down here and you can click on the Trim Extra Line button. And then when you draw, if you draw a shape and there's extra lines, it's gonna cut them automatically. But it will always kind of make a sharp turn here. So instead of going with the contour editor and trying to make it less pointy or less like square, what you can do instead is activate also its neighbor tool called the Align Handle After Trim. And then this will create more of a round shape after you do it. Of course, you still need to practice. Try to aim for a perfect circle, because if you do something like that, it will not smooth it out. It's really more for if you're almost there. It's going to prevent little bugs from happening. And don't forget that if you actually need a circle, you can get the circle tool here and actually make a circle. You know, sometimes simpler solutions exist. Don't forget those. When we clean up a drawing using the brush tool or a real-life pencil, we tend to draw multiple strokes in order to really sculpt our line work and give it a good thick and thin. That's normal and that's okay. But however, if you try to do this with your pencil, it looks fine. But as soon as you click on K to see your vectors, you see that you're off to a very bad time once you're going to try to color. And if you do this for all your drawings, your computer is also going to have a bad time computing your animation. And it's even worse if you try to create your color art from your line art. This is not going to be easy to paint at all. So don't do that ever. So to prevent that, Harmony offers you a tool to sculpt your line. It's located in the pencil properties. It's down here, and it's called the line building mode. You can activate and deactivate it by clicking on the icon, and I typically set it to a shortcut, the Z shortcut, because I know it's useless for everything else. And it's near the Alt and Command button, so I can turn it back on and off at will. So the way the line builder works is that if you draw a line and you keep drawing small lines after, it's going to just keep adding them to your current line, allowing you to sculpt longer lines. And it's fun because if you draw something like this that is very thick and then ends in a small way, if you then press big again and keep going, it's still going to maintain the thickness of the last stroke. Which means that if I start here, it's going to start small. But if I start here instead and keep going, it's going to keep using the same weight I had before, which makes it very easy to clean up your lines. Sometimes because Harmony is trying to optimize your lines and make them look nice, sometimes you'll get something that is very round instead of sharp. So to do that, I usually turn my line building mode off, and I just start from here using the Alt or Option shortcut. And then maybe I'm going to try to turn back my line building mode on and just keep going. So you see here, sometimes for very sharp turns, I tend not to use the line building mode. The line building mode is good for long, smooth line like the hair here. For very sharp turns, I tend to just turn it off and just start using the Alt key. So the cutter tool, you can activate it by going to your select tool here and finding the cutter. And the cutter tool is pretty cool because if you want to get rid of your extra lines, you can Fruit Ninja them away and just slash what you don't need. And then since the cutter tool's shortcut is Alt T, if I just press on T and I don't release it, it's going to keep using the cutter tool until I release. And when I'm done, I just release and I keep on drawing. So it's becoming very quick to just clean my drawings like that. And if you use the cutter tool, then your lines are always closed. So that's great. For the cutter tool though, be sure to go into the properties and set it to round or flat depending on what you need. Sometimes for things that are like surrounding, I like to use the round, but sometimes if it's too thick when it leaves, if you cut it round, it's gonna go overboard. But if instead you cut it flat style, usually it's a bit more lenient. So that's great. One thing I forgot to say about the Alt key is that for sure, if you want to use it for the surrounding of your shape, it works great. But it's also great to add details inside a shape. So if I use it on the arms here, I'm just gonna go and clean up my arm like that. And if I want to clean up these shapes, of course I can do this and then take the cutter and cut it away. Or I can press on Alt to start from here, and then I can just keep pressing Alt to close it. You just have to be careful with the Alt, because if you give your computer too much freedom to do your line, sometimes it's going to create a weird line. So be sure to stop very close to the line before you release, and then you should be good. If you're using the line tool to clean up, remember to think of it as hammering nails. So you click one time, then you go to your destination, you click on Control or Command, and then you just keep dragging to create your shapes. So the thing that people usually hate about cleaning up with the line tool is that they say, oh, it's too fake, it doesn't look like hand-drawn and blah blah blah. But actually, if you find yourself a nice stencil and you go here and you set it to maybe, I don't know, 25% minimum and like 10 here, so something like that. So a very thick line like that. Since the line tool uses distance to do it thick and thin, you can do something like this, and then it becomes a bit less artificial. But it still looks a bit fake because it lacks the personality that you would give it yourself. So that's when the line building tool comes in very handy. So you can do something like that. And then with the line building mode, depending on if you start from here or if you start from here, it will not be the same. So if you want it to be thick at the edge, I will just erase here and just keep going. And then I'll have a very nice shape. It looks complicated, but it's actually super simple. You can just go here, then maybe remove this line, and then you start from here, and you can just keep building. And if you click, and depending on where you click, it's going to remember the thickness that it had. So just to finish the video, I'm going to clean up part of the drawing to see how I would do it. And that's it. I hope you had fun and that's going to be useful for your production. See you next week.